ओके
वो तो वही शूट मारती हैं। अब बाकी इसको ऑन कर लें। इसका नाम हाँ जी मैं जा रहा हूँ नमाज पढ़ने।
नमाज खाना बोलो
लेना सी अच्छा
आज का दिन दूसरी पर
जॉब है
हाँ
अच्छा अच्छा ठीक है तो सब ठीक होगा ना जी
अब बस
किस दिन जाना सर
मैं मौलाना बिठा के जावा आज सीमा का फोन आने से बड़े नाराज होंगे सन
क्यों
निकल दी मालूम कुछ टाइम दिता थे मैं
टाइम
कभी
बन के
टाइम
देना
तो मैं क्या टाइम
उससे के कुमराद
फोन
जो कुमराद होगा फोन को बंद कर
आओ मैं आज दे दें बन आज मैं वादा किया
लेकिन टाइम फिर भी लिमिटेड ना
हां जाहिर है वो तो मैंने आख्या मैं कि दो का कोई
इस देखो मौलवी 10 से कोई कंप्रोमाइज
हां बिल्कुल सही एक बंदा दो तीन में पढ़ सकता
माने मौलवी साहब लेट नहीं करना तो पता है उसको लोगों ने कम पे जाना है तो ये
अब बिल्कुल सही ऑलरेडी 12 पे हो जाते हैं
जकी है मैंने पढ़ने को कुछ लोग
हां कुछ नहीं
Assalamu good alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Good for you.
How are you? I'm good. Thank you so much.
Majlis sir, how are you? Yes. So the review, are you?
Flag back.
Yeah.
Well, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Narai Takbir, Narai Salat, Narai Hadari, Husainiyat, Husainiyat, Yazidiyat, Yazidiyat, Labbaik ya Hussein, Labbaik ya Hussein, Labbaik ya Hussein, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
In the name of Almighty Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, Allah showered His mercy on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his progeny. Now I would like to invite Brother Rizale for the recitation of Quran for Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala
Shuriya Shaisha Najaf Lantar Salawat.
Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We will start inshallah our program by recitation of a few ayah of Quran Azim Shan from Surah Al-Baqarah, the continuation of those verses that we have recited before. So it is today from verses 16 to verses 20. And I request all brothers and sisters to say loud salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله وهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون أو كصيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر الموت والله محيط بالكافرين يكاد البرق يخطف أبصارهم كلما أضاء لهم مشوا فيه وإذا أظلم عليهم قاموا ولو شاء الله لذهب بسمعهم وأبصارهم إن الله على كل شيء قدير إن الله على كل شيء قدير صدق الله العلي العظيم ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد
آل محمد عبد
MashaAllah, brother Rizal. MashaAllah. Baradigar salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
We are here to commemorate the great sacrifice made by Mullah Hussain alayhi salam, his companion and his family members for the sake of Islam, to save Islam from evils. Today is the 4th day of Muharram and 5th night. The 4th day of Muharram. On this date, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad Lanatullah alayh, governor of Kufa, ordered the people of Kufa to gather inside city of mosque. He told people of Kufa, if you will fight against Hussein, then Yazid bin Muawiyah will give you a reward. You must listen these words from the inner souls. Ubaydullah bin Ziyad seized Kufa. No one can left Kufa without his order. On the same day, Hazrat Zainab Salamullah alayha asked Imam Hussain, "Oh my brother Hussain, I'm watching every day thousands of soldiers of enemies are coming. No one is coming to support you, and why they are coming?" Imam Hussain replied to his sister, "Oh my sister, they are coming to kill me." Bibi Zainab had tears in her eyes. The Sayyidah Zainab asked Imam Hussain, "Do you have anyone to call him for your help?" On the same day, Imam Hussain alayhi salam wrote a letter to his childhood friend Habib ibn Mazahir. On these beside our heartiest condolences to our time of Imam al-Asr alayhi salam, to all Muslim Ummah, especially lover of Ahlul Bayt and Mu'mineen of Saskatoon. By Muhammad wa Ahlul Bayt Muhammad salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد
हम रोज आजादारी मजलूम मोहम्मद अलैहिस्सलाम के लिए आ रहे हैं, तो आजादारी पर चंद इशार हैं। सजदा है तलावत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर, सजदा है तलावत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर, मेराज इबादत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर, इस्लाम की खिदमत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर, हाँ अजर रिसालत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर। इस दौरे यजीदी में भी ये मजलिस मातम, इस दौरे यजीदी में भी ये मजलिस मातम, नेज़े पे तलावत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर। आदत नहीं फितरत के तकाज़े हैं जरूरी, हम लोगों की फितरत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर। जो आला नस्ब हैं वो अज़ादार रहेंगे, जो आला नस्ब हैं वो अज़ादार रहेंगे, मेयारे शराफत है अज़ादारी ये शब्बीर। पर मोहम्मद व अहले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु I would like to invite Brother Own to recite Salam, Brother Own by Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat.
Private studio Bibi Zainab sallallahu alayhi wa sallam salawat. Chabrida sir se chini मैं सदा देती रहती तू ना आया वासी जबरदा सर से चनी मैं सदा देती रहती तू ना आया वासी आए इमरान कहाँ और जिंदान कहाँ ये बहन कैद हुई तू ना आया गाजी जबरदा सर से शनी मैं सदा देती रही तू ना आया गाजी हमको पानी ना मिले तेरी खुशबू तो रहे तेरे बाजू ना कटे चाहे मशकी जाच दे ये मगर हो ना सका तेरे बाजू है जुदा मुझ पे है तशना लगी तू ना आया गाजी जबरदा सर से चनी मैं सदा देती रही तू ना आया गाजी धूप में तू था शजर तुझसे आबाद था घर है बारहना मेरा सर क्या नहीं तुझको खबर है अलमदार वफा इस बहन को बाखुदा तुझसे ढारस्ती भरी तू ना आया वासी जबरदा सर से चनी मैं सदा देती रही तू ना आया गाजी आ गई शाम अलम लुट गए अहले हरम रेत पर चलती हुई हो गया ठंडालम उर्सा देने के लिए मुझसे मिलने के लिए आ गए बाबा जी तू ना आया गाजी जबरदा सर से चनी मैं सदा देती रही तू ना आया गाजी कैद खाने में कज़ा जब सकीना को मिली देखे कुर्ते जान बची दफनाई गई उस घड़ी नाम तेरा सूरत नादे अली तुम्हें दोरा की लगी तू ना आया गाजी जबरता सर से छिनी मैं सदा देखती रही तू ना आया गाजी आले इमरान कहाँ और जिंदान कहाँ ये बहन कैद हुई तू ना आया गाजी रंकर सलावत
माशाअल्लाह और दीगर सलावत ज़िब्हे अजीम के लिए जिसने चुना उसे उस हाल के अजीम का मंशा हुसैन है लफ्ते दिलो जिगर है अलियो बतूल का खत्मे रुसल की आंख का तारा हुसैन है बैदे यजीद फासिक को फाजर की क्यों करे बैदे यजीद फासिक को फाजर की क्यों करे बिन्ते नबी की गोद का पाला हुसैन है पर मोहम्मद व बैत मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु I would like to invite Brother Zaki to recite Salam. Brother Zaki, by Muhammad wa Nabi Muhammad Salawat.
नारे तकबीर नारे रिसालत नारे हैदरी हुसैनियत जिंदाबाद हुसैनियत जिंदाबाद यजीदियत मुर्दाबाद यजीदियत मुर्दाबाद शूरी इमाम हुसैन इस्लाम लश्कर सलावत
बड़ी मोहम्मद वाले हुसैन बात रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ हुसैन बात रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ कुछ आंसुओं के बस कायनात ले जाओ हुसैन बाज रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ ये करबला है ये मोजिज़ नुमा की बस्ती है ये करबला है ये मोजिज़ नुमा की बस्ती है कफन में इसके लपेटो गया ले जाओ
हुसैन बांट रहे हैं निजात ले जाओ खुदा उतार रहा है हुसैन का सदका खुदा उतार रहा है हुसैन का सदका रसूल नए मौजज़ा ले जाओ
जिंदाबाद
हुसैनियत
माशाअल्लाह माशाअल्लाह बारे दीगर सलावत A sad news, our executive member and finance secretary, brother Humayun Aziz, his father-in-law passed away. So, the marhum name is Sayyid Amir Abbas Naqvi, son of Sayyid Ali Abbas, one Surah Fatiha, Ma Salawat. Muhammad wa Ahmad Muhammad Salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And today Majlis and Tabarak is sponsored by brother Sayyid On Abdi, brother Fakhar Abbas, brother Imdad Ali, brother Fayaz Ali, brother Zulfikar Ansari. He recites Surah Fatiha for their marhoomin ma'as salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yeah. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I would like to invite brother Ijaz Hashmi to recite salam. Brother Ijaz Hashmi by Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
फकीरों का भी क्या चाहेगा बस्ती बसा बैठे फकीरों का भी क्या चाहेगा बस्ती बसा बैठे अली वाले जहाँ बैठे हुई जन्नत बना बैठे परावे दार हो मकतल हो जिंदा हो के सहरा हो फराजे दार हो मकतल हो जिंदा हो के सहरा हो, जहाँ जिक्र अली छेड़ा वही दीवाने आ बैठे, जहाँ जिक्र अली छेड़ा वही दीवाने आ बैठे। कोई मौसम कोई भी वक्त कोई भी इलाका हो, कोई मौसम कोई भी वक्त कोई भी इलाका हो, जलीश के अली की शम्मा और परवाने आ बैठे। जलीश के अली की शम्मा और परवाने आ बैठे। अली वालों का मरना भी कोई मरने में मरना है, अली वालों का मरना भी कोई मरने में मरना है। चले अपने मका से और अली के दर पे जा बैठे, चले अपने मका से और अली के दर पे जा बैठे। ये कौन आया किस तक बाल को सब अंबिया उठे, ये कौन आया किस तक बाल को सब अंबिया उठे, न बैठे गा कोई तब तक न जब तक फातिमा बैठे। अली वालों का मरना भी कोई मरने में मरना है, अली वालों का मरना भी कोई मरने में मरना है। चले अपने मका से और अली के दर पे जा बैठे, फकीरों का भी क्या चाहे जहाँ बस्ती बसा बैठे, अली वाले जहाँ बैठे वही जन्नत बना बैठे।
Mashallah, mashallah. Baridillah salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Or I'm inviting Maulana to please come closer to Member Hussaini. Step forward and come closer to the Member Hussaini. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Every day announcement, we have a Majlis sponsorship program. So, if someone want to sponsor Majlis, so one Majlis costs 400. One or the group of the people can sponsor Majlis. And the pending annual fees, I will request Please, member of Hussainiya, pay your pending annual fees and the promises you guys made. Please fulfill your promises. Thank you. Par Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat. So I would like to invite Jazal Islam wal Muslimin Maulana Saeed Inji to recite Majlis tonight. Today his topic is redirecting our Muharram campus by Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat. Narae Takbir, Narae Risalat, Narae Hadari, Husainiyat, Husainiyat, Yazidiyat, Yazidiyat, Labbaik ya Husain, 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 Labbaik ya Husain. Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
مدحت کن و بستای کسی را که پیامبر تو ستود و ثنا کرد بدو داد همکار. این کیست بدین حال که بود است که باشد جز شیر خداوند جهان ایدر کرار. علم همه عالم به علی داد پیامبر چون ابر بهاری که دهد سیل به گلزار. این دین خدا را مثل دایره دان پیغمبر ما نطق و حیدر قد پرگار. بر خاتم انبیا محمد مصطفی صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
Before we begin for tonight, let's make a note of the sponsors for tonight's Majlis and the Tabarruk. Tonight's program, August 13th, 2021, fourth day, the fifth night of Muharram, has been sponsored by Brother Sayyid Owen Abdi, Brother Athar Abbas, Brother Imdad Ali, Brother Fayaz Ali, and Brother Zulfikar Ansari. For their thawab, the thawab of their family members, and the marhumin, Shurz al-Mubarak, Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين لا سيما مولانا وسيدي صاحب العصر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء وأجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة دائمة على أعدائه من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. فقال الله الحكيم في كتابه المبين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أن اعبدوا الله واتقوه وأطيعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the hastening of the return of our top Imam al-Hujjah, one salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Tonight is our fifth night of the month of Muharram as we continue the remembrance of the tragedy of Karbala and the sacrifice of Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam and the family and friends on the 10th of Muharram. And as a reminder, we'll be looking at or using verse number 3 of chapter number 71, Surah An-Nuh, the chapter of Prophet Noah, to form our discussion for this series of this Muharram. And as the verse mentions, Allah is actually quoting the words of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam that he was speaking to his community as he was the messenger of the time, as he was propagating the message of Islam. And it was a very simple message. It was An i'budullah wattaquhu wa ati'un. three main principles of religion, as we've been saying. We've been mentioning the fact that religion that God has sent, that Allah has sent throughout the ages, is based upon worship of Allah. And as we mentioned in the beginning nights, that before you can worship Allah, before we can worship God, we have to know Him. We have to have ma'rifatullah. We have to know who Allah is. We can then worship Him. Religion is also about having ethics, morality, and He says about having the taqwa of Allah. And it is about also having the following of the prophets, about believing in the messengers and all of that which that entails, which obviously means the ahkam, the practical aspect of Islam. So we have aqaid, we have akhlaq, and we have ahkam. And then obviously through those three, they obviously branch out. So aqaid is obviously the belief system which goes into tawheed, into nubuwwah, into qiyamah, into adalah, into imamah. We have ahkam, which is all of our daily practice, all of the actions that we do once we become baligh. For the men and the women, a series of rulings become an obligation upon us to perform. And we have akhlaq, the morality, the moral compass. And that's what I want to look at for tonight and tomorrow, inshallah, is about redirecting our moral compass. You know, when you look at the Quran and you look at how Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about the role of prophets, why did He send 124,000 as we mentioned the other night? We mentioned that Allah sent these prophets to humanity to guide us because we were in error. We were in dalal al-mubin, as we read in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, that we recite at least every Friday, chapter number 62, verse number 2. We say that هُوَ الَّذِي بَعَثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. That He it is Allah who sent from amongst the Ummiyun. Now that in itself is an entire discussion. You know, our brothers in the Ahlul Sunnah, they say that Rasulullah was Ummiyun, it means he was illiterate. He could not read or write. And we, as the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we reject that interpretation. We say no, that the Prophet was taught by the greatest of teachers, which is Allah. He could read and write, but he never practiced it in the open. And there is a wisdom behind why that was. So Allah says He sent from amongst the Ummiyun, which can also mean the people of al-Qura, the city of Mecca, a prophet from amongst themselves. He was a human being. He was a bashar. He wasn't an angel. He was a human being. And his job was manifold. Yatlu alayhim ayati. He would receive wahi, revelation from Allah. He would communicate that back to the community. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ. He would work to purify the people. Not physical, how to make wudu and tahara. No. Spiritual purification. Teach them the morality, ethics of what it means to be a human being, to be on the path of servitude of Allah. And obviously then, وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. He was not only reading ayat, reciting the verses to the community, he was teaching them the ayat and the wisdom. The wisdom here, according to some commentators, it means the sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So the Prophet was not just a delivery man. You know, some Muslims, unfortunately, they have this belief that the Prophet was just like a mailman. He received revelation from God, He conveyed it to us, and that was it. No, but if you look in the Quran, you see that the Prophet was there to teach the book. Just like many of you or all of you have gone to school or are currently in school, whether it's elementary or post-secondary or anything in between, you could just simply go and buy the textbook or get the book from school and go home and read the book. You might understand maybe 5, 10, 20% of what you're reading. But why do you go and sit in a classroom for 6, 7, 8 hours a day? Because there are things in the book that you might not understand. And you need a teacher to guide you through the book. So the Muslims could have read the Quran very easily. It's in Arabiyyun Mubin, as Allah says, it is a clear Arabic. But there are nuances in the Quran there are things which are so subtle and fine that it needs a teacher to teach the book. And so the Prophet taught the book, he taught the Sunnah, the wisdom, as Allah says, وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. The Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula were in the era of Jahiliyyah, as I talked about a few nights ago. Era of decadence. They didn't know, and they didn't know that they didn't know. They were in compound ignorance. And so there had to come a teacher to refine the morality, to teach them about God, to show them the responsibility. In fact, we have a hadith from our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in which he quoted as saying, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The only reason I was appointed, deputed as a prophet, was to perfect the noble moral ethics and qualities. He was there as a teacher, as a perfect example of what it means to be a human being. And in fact, even one of his wives, Aisha, when she was asked about Rasulullah, and this is a hadith that Allama Tabatabai, the late Allama Tabatabai, the author of Al-Mizan, that he quotes in his book called Sunan al-Nabi, he quotes her as saying that the akhlaq of the prophets was the Quran. So all of the great qualities of the Quran were embodied in Rasulullah. And this coming from a wife of the Prophet, whom, as we know, the Quran has had to very harshly rebuke in chapter 66, Surah At-Tahrim. So the Prophet was the embodiment of Quran. He was the embodiment of the perfection of what a human being can reach to. And as our messenger, we are obviously expected to try and follow in his path to get to that level. We probably will never make it, but the goal is try to work at that level to become one who follows and is an embodiment of the teachings of the Quran as exemplified by the prophets. So now when we look at the topic that I've been going over, we look at it from the point of view of aqaid. We've already touched upon that to an extent. We looked at, or we are going to look at akhlaq, and on the ahkam we've also touched upon. And obviously, these are things that we learn from home, from our parents, and you'll see why I mentioned this as we build up on it. But we learn a lot of this from home, from our family. We learn about aqaid, we learn about the fiqh, we learn about morality from home. Some of the things we're born with, it's ingrained in our life, in our blood, in our DNA. And obviously we have the Majlis of Muharram and Shahr Ramadan, of other times of the year. We have the madrasa, obviously that acts as a vehicle to get these teachings out. And I've just been reminded that this community also has a madrasa, which is great to see. And if parents have children of that age that are within the age of the madrasa, I would obviously strongly advise parents to ensure your children come to those sessions, even though you may think you can teach them at home, but to be in the environment, because we know many times children don't like to learn from their parents, right? They want to be away from them. So if you have children of that age, it's great to send them. They can also interact with children their age and learn about these same teachings at a deeper level that maybe as parents you may not be able to provide to them. So one of these areas that we're looking at tonight is akhlaq, at morality. What is akhlaq? What is the Islamic moral system all about? Well, the way that scholars define it is that they say that this is a part of our religion, akhlaq, in which it speaks or it seeks to address the inner attributes, the inner sifat of a human being, to amplify and magnify the good akhlaq, the good morality, the good conduct of a believer, and to ensure that if they have any negative qualities, any of those weeds, that it basically removes them. Really, akhlaq is, if you look at our life, akhlaq could be like a gardener. I'm sure many of you have homes, you have gardens, you plant flowers. Maybe you're fortunate enough, if you have good weather, to plant fruits and vegetables in your backyard. Maybe you grow tomatoes or carrots or what have you. And one of the things you would know is that when you put the seed in the ground and you water, you get the ground ready in the spring, you have the fertilizer or whatever, you buy the plants, the saplings from the store, you buy the seeds, you grow the seeds in the ground, one of the things you will notice is that as the season progresses, weeds will begin to grow, right? Weeds begin to grow, so you're there on your knees, pulling the weeds out one by one. Maybe you're using pesticides, which isn't the best thing to do, because it's obviously detrimental to the health and the environment. But you'll get out there, you'll get your hands dirty to remove the weeds, so that the thing you want to grow can have the ability to grow. Because the weeds will eventually suffocate the plant, take all the nutrients. It will eat away at what you're planting, and you won't get your harvest at the end of the year. Akhlaq, think of akhlaq like that in our life, in our day-to-day life, we go through life, we live in this society, we live even in the so-called Muslim world, and every day we go out, we have weeds growing in us because we hear the haram music, and a weed will grow in our hearts. We would see the haram, another weed grows in our hearts. We would, maybe even listen or speak things which are inappropriate. Those weeds are growing in the hearts. And a point would come, if we don't clean the hearts, that those weeds would take it over. It would completely darken and sully over the heart, and it would become a person who is like a living dead. You're alive, but your heart is dead. Like you don't have it in you to be a human being anymore. And so the gardener that pulls out the weeds, in Islam, we would call that akhlaq, the teachings of akhlaq. And obviously the best gardener is our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So, that's really at one level the importance of akhlaq, and we can never underestimate it. Unfortunately, we as in the scholarly community and the speakers, we don't give a lot of importance to akhlaq. I mentioned a few nights ago in the Quran, a maximum of 500 ayat about ahkam, right? Scholars say that almost 2,000 ayat of the Quran are about akhlaq. 2,000, that's 1/3 of the Quran about akhlaq. 1/3 is also about Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of judgment and accountability. The rest of the Quran is about Tawheed, about prophethood, and other topics. But with 1/3 of the Quran being about morality, morals, ethics, how to be a good human being, that means that we should be stressing and making sure that we learn about the Islamic moral system. What does Islam have to say about how to lead life? When you look at the Quran and as we move on, you see that there are words that Allah uses. For example, He uses the word khuluq, or we call this what we're talking about akhlaq. Akhlaq being the plural. And you see, for example, when Allah describes Rasulullah, He says, "Innaka la'ala khuluqin azim." You, O Prophet, stand at the pinnacle of perfection of morality. Right? This is the character of the Prophet. And sometimes you'll see in the Quran the word khalq and khulq. And they're two different things. Even on the day of Ashura, you'll recall when Abu Abdullah والسلام, was about to send Hazrat Ali Akbar والسلام, to the battlefield. What did he say? Addressing Allah, Abu Abdullah makes a dua, right? Allahumma shahad ala ha'ula. Oh Allah, you bear witness over these tyrants, meaning the army of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad Mal'un. فَقَدْ بَرَزَ إِلَيْهِمْ أَشْبَهُ النَّاسِ خَلْقًا وَخُلْقًا وَمَنْتِقًا بِرَسُولِهِ. I am sending forth an individual who most resembles your prophet, khalqan, in his physical stature, khulqan, in his akhlaq, wa mantiqan, in the way he speaks. So khalq, when you see this in the Quran, it's about our physical creation, our physical being. Khulq is about our spiritual, our akhlaq, our morality. And obviously, Allah creates us in the best of forms. The khalq of us is the best of forms. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We are in the best of forms. But the khulq, that's where the challenge comes, right? Because you and I cannot be formed, in a petri dish. Although scientists are trying to play with chromosomes and see if they can genetically modify human beings, remove some genes that may result in deformities or handicaps. Maybe they might want to create a race of people who are all blonde hair, blue-eyed. You know, they might get to the stage one day to create and genetically modify a human being, just as they genetically modify a lot of the food we eat today. But can they genetically modify the akhlaq of a human being? That's the question, right? And that's what is most pertinent and relevant, is how are you as a human being, right? We don't look at the physical, right? The physical bodies are irrelevant. It's the morality, the morals, the etiquette. How are you as a person? And this is where even science has come up with some really interesting research. You know, when you look at it from the point of view of, are we born with morality, or is it something we learn from our parents? There's a American magazine called Psychology Today. They have a website as well. They're a massive media enterprise studying sociology and psychology in the human being. And they've come to some early conclusions that a lot of what the human being recognizes as morality, as morals, as ethics, that these are actually things they're born with. They say that a lot of what human beings know as morally good and bad, the moral compass, they say a lot of that is what you are born with. It's hardwired into our brain. By who? Who put it there? Did evolution put morality in our brains, that to be good and nice and fair is a good trait? No, we obviously would say that this is the fitrah. This is the way Allah Azza wa Jal created us as human beings. We are born with certain qualities, right? We are born, even if you look at it, there's a book actually by a non-Muslim academic called Born Believers. And he tries to argue that even children, when they're born believing in one God. And he has his own scientific research and evidence to prove that. You can probably find this book at the local library here in Saskatoon, or purchase it off Amazon, called Born Believers. So there's this notion that we are born knowing certain things. We are knowing certain things, and then obviously, as we grow older, we go to school, we watch television, we interact with people, and things either become better for us and we learn more, or unfortunately, as we see in the world today, that people get worse, become cutthroat, become backstabbing, they become liars. You know, we had a time a few years ago when the president in the United States, he would actually speak his mouth and nothing but lies would come out of it, to the point where CNN would actually have a fact checker every day, and they would count the number of lies he would say every day. I'm not kidding. You can go and look this up if you don't remember the last president in America. Every day they would come on the air and say he opened his mouth this many times. This is how many lies he said. So obviously this is an issue not only with him, but society in general. And so when we look at akhlaq, we have to recognize, brothers and sisters, that there are two streams of where we learn our identity, or our morality, our akhlaq. We have one stream in the world today which says we believe in secular ethics. We let science, the intellect, and reason tell us what is good and bad. But you know, the problem with that is obvious, that the moral compass of humanity continues to change. Today, you may say something is good. You know, for the last 100 years in Canada, let's say, cannabis was banned. It had detrimental impact. It was illegal. It was punishable by law. You could go to jail. In America, it's still illegal. In many of the states, it's a federal crime. States are regulating it or legalizing it. But at a time in history, marijuana, cannabis was illegal. It's always been haram in Islam, right? Don't think that, oh, it's a harmless drug. It's not like crack cocaine, or it's not like beer or alcohol. No, it's still a drug, it's a narcotic, it's a controlled substance, and it is haram in Islam. To smoke a joint is haram. You can't say, well, it's not in the hadith, it's not in the Quran, so I can go out and buy my marijuana from the local dispensary and smoke it. No, it's haram. But look at how the morality of our society changed. At one time it was illegal, it was impermissible, you'd go to jail. Today it's allowed. People, it's sold online, it's sold in the corner stores where they allow it. So you will see that morality will change. The ethics of society will change. They'll come up with research and say that this is good. Even we know that marriage relationships at one time in North America, it was between man and a woman. That is the norm. It's like the bumper sticker says that God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, right? But today, look at how Canada has changed. They've legalized those forms of marriage, and God knows where they will go in the future. Why? Because their moral compass began to shift based on the majority of people. Democracy says this, so we go with democracy. People want to do this and that. They want to live open, free lifestyles, a hedonistic life. So let's legalize everything. Let them go and do whatever they want. Or you look at the other side, which is that ethics, morality is not dictated by the majority. It's dictated by one, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously taught to us by the prophets, especially our prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And in the divine teachings that Allah has given to us, which are obviously meant to get us to heaven, not only in the world to come, but in this world to have the best possible life, those teachings are cemented. They're immutable. They're not going to change between the time of the 3rd Imam to the 9th Imam till today, right? Things in the Quran that are haram, the moral qualities, let's say ghiba, backbiting, which Surah Al-Hujurat talks about, chapter 49, which is incidentally the chapter of Islamic morality. Ghiba has always been haram. To talk about a believer in a way that they don't like to be talked about was haram, is haram, will always be haram. Right? And just let me mention here that ghiba, sometimes people think, oh, it's only if I say something bad about somebody. And that is ghiba, obviously, and it's haram. But ghiba can also be if you say something to describe a person, which maybe they don't like. Let's just say, you have 5 people with the same name in the community, 5 Alis in the community, which is obviously very much possible. And you're talking to a friend, I saw Ali the other day. And he's like, which Ali are you talking about? And you say, Ali, the fat one. Or Ali, the guy who walks with a limp. Or Ali, the guy whose one eye is not functioning properly. That is ghiba according to Islam. It's haram. You're mentioning a quality obviously of him, but maybe it's something he would not like for you to say, to describe him in that way. But ghiba has always been impermissible, and it will continue to be. The government can't come and regulate and change it. Even an Islamic government could never come and say, you know what? From today onwards, in the Islamic Republic of blank, you pick the country, we're going to allow ghiba. Hey, it's an open season, talk about whoever you want, no problem. Tweet, send messages, TikToks about people, it's okay. No, because these are fixed in Islam. We can't change them because we feel that, we're progressing and we want to have freedom to say what we want. So divine ethics, which are getting us to Allah, are fixed. And we'll look at that more tomorrow night, but just for tonight, you have to appreciate that they're determined by Allah. The Prophet and Ahlul Bayt taught them to us. They gave us examples on how they would impact our life. And we have to learn and follow those teachings. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala We also have to realize, brothers and sisters, when it comes to akhlaq, there are 2 different ways we can also approach it. One is what's in the Quran, what's in the hadith, and obviously what our scholars have given to us. And you might say, well, how am I going to learn all of the akhlaq I need? I can't go through all of those 1,000 or 2,000 verses of the Quran and find every single verse about akhlaq. And you're right. It's difficult. It's difficult for many people. You can't open up a book of hadith, and we have hundreds of books of hadith. You're going to say, well, how do I know where to start? And alhamdulillah, our grand scholars have done a tremendous effort to compile books based on the akhlaq, on the morality that are embodied in the Quran and the prophetic traditions. So we have books, for example, like Jami al-Sa'adat by Mullah Naraki. Unfortunately, not in English, it's in Arabic, it's in Urdu and Persian, but there's no English full translation. But then we have books like Qalb al-Salim by Shahid Dastaghaib, Ayatollah Shahid Dastaghaib Shirazi from Iran. He wrote many books. One of them is called Gunahan Kabira, available in English, The Major Sins. We have Qalb al-Salim, The Immaculate Heart, available in multi-languages, and many other books out there that give us, even the book, for example, Makarim al-Akhlaq, which teach us the morality of Islam as they have taken the ayat, the hadith, sifted through everything, and then given us what we need to know. So if we can't go to the Quran directly, then these books are available. If you look on alislam.org, the biggest probably site for the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam in English online, these books are there for free download, free reading. And it's up to us then to take that step and try and pick out what it is we need. What are those weeds that, as I talked about earlier, that are within us that we can pull out? Right? We might not read the book cover to cover. We might look through the index and say, well, you know what? I don't have jealousy in me, so I'll skip that chapter for now. But maybe I'll get to the chapter of lying. And you'll think, you know what? I do lie a bit here and there. I've told untruths. So let me read that chapter and see what it is that the teacher wants me to get to remove that weed from my life. And so in that way, brothers and sisters, you can pick and choose where you find you need more help and go to that chapter, read it, reflect upon it, try and implement it. Obviously, the goal of reading is to implement so that you can become a better human being. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We also will realize that all of the akhlaq is not necessarily within the Quran and Hadith. Now, what I mean by that is Islam gave us universals. It didn't speak about particulars, right? So Allah says, Aqimu salat, establish the prayer. But we know that there are 5 daily prayers. We have Salatul Eid, Salatul Jummah, Salatul Ayat, for example. So the general, the specifics were given to us by the Prophet. But then at the same time, at another level, there are things in our society, even here in Saskatoon in Canada, which are maybe not Islamic morality, but they're considered by the urf, the common people, as being good things to do, as being things that a good person would do. You know, something as simple as you're going into a store and somebody is behind you and you keep the door open for them. There's no verse in the Quran about that. There's no hadith about keeping the door open. But you know that in our community, in our society, this is something which is done by the people, because logically it's something which is acceptable, that somebody is walking into the store or even to the center and you see them coming up behind you, you open the door for them. There's no hadith about it, but it's known in Canadian society or in human society, I would say, that is how human beings act with others. So you will find many times things that are not Islamic, so to speak, but are based in the culture that we live in. Now, as long as those norms of the culture don't transgress the rules of Islam, we're okay. But if the etiquette goes against Islam, then that's where we have to draw a line. And I'll give you one example. In Muslim culture and in Western society, it's pre-COVID days. It was a sign of respect to shake somebody's hand. You go to the bank, you have a meeting with somebody in the bank, you shake their hand. You go to work, you shake the person's hand, even if it's of the opposite gender. Generally speaking, for non-Muslims, right? So handshaking is a part of this culture. In some cultures in Europe, to hug the person is a form of respect. It's a form of their order, of their community, the norms of the society. But as Muslims, we all know it's haram for a man to touch a woman unless he's married to her or they're related by blood, like your mother, your sister, your grandmother, your daughter, your aunt, meaning your mom's sister or your dad's sister. Those are your maharim. You can touch them, you can hug them, you can shake their hand. But all other women, you can't touch them. You can't just give them a hug or a shake, even if you're going for a job interview. So in the society, it's considered normal to shake a hand of a person regardless of the gender, again, pre-COVID. But in Islam, it's haram. So what do? Do you follow the norms of Canada and say, well, as they say in Rome, do as the Romans? You just follow the norm of Canada because everybody's doing it? And that's good akhlaq, it's good etiquette, it shows respect. No, we have to see that, look, this goes against the norms of Islam. This is haram in 99% of the instances. Yes, there is a short or a small window where there is a permissibility if there is an extreme situation. But believe you me, I don't think we can ever go into that situation where it is a necessity to shake the other person's hand. Let me give you an example. This has actually happened to me maybe about 15 years ago. So I went into my local bank to get some investment work done. They assigned me a investment representative at the bank, and I waited. I walked into the office, and it happened to be a woman. So she obviously puts her hand out to shake my hand, and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, because of religious reasons, we don't have physical contact with people of the opposite gender. So she was taken aback a bit. She was kind of like, that's kind of weird, but she didn't say anything. She's all right with it. Sat down, got business done. And then she asked me, well, first of all, what religion I follow. So I told her I follow Islam. She said, what is this thing that you don't touch people of the opposite gender? So I explained to her, I said, look, as Muslims, we believe in that prevention is better than cure, right? Prevention is better than cure. And I said Islam does not want there to be even an opportunity for some level of illicit relationship between the genders, and so it makes sure that all forms of physical contact are removed right at the beginning. Right? Just like this whole Me Too movement that started a few years ago, or if you're following what happened to the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, in this last week, and him saying, I innocently kissed a woman on the cheek, or I touched this, or I touched that. So I told her, I said, look, as Muslims, we have these rules. And subhanAllah, she told me, she was a Christian woman, she had a cross around her neck. She told me, don't remember her exact words, it was 15 years ago, but basically she says to me, she says, I respect that. She says that I wish I could do that, being a Christian, but because I work in this bank and this is a part of the culture in Canada, I'm expected to shake everybody's hand who comes into my office. Otherwise, I would not like to do that. So that shows us, brothers and sisters, that even Christians who follow their teachings, they have morality. They're not all open and free living, doing what they want to do. No, they have morals. Unfortunately, some Christians are away from the teachings, just as some Muslims are away from the teachings, right? I'm sure it's happened to you many times. It's happened to me where me and a Muslim friend go to a meeting and a woman will try to shake my hand. I'll apologize, and my Muslim colleague will shake her hand. And they know we're both Muslims. His name is Muhammad. You can't get any more Muslim than Muhammad. Right? And that's where it bites us in the end, that we don't follow our own religion. And when I see that Christian woman respecting her tradition, but recognizing that she can't do that because of the situation she's in, but she wished that she could live that moral lifestyle, it shows me that we have the ability, brothers and sisters, to live morality, live the morals of Islam, and still be productive members of this society. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So as I said, and as I'm trying to conclude the next few moments, that psychology today says people are born with ethics. And the Quran also alludes to this. If you remember Surah Ash-Shams, chapter number 91, we read it in Salatul Eid every year, twice a year. In verse number 8, after Allah takes all of these customs, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا, all the way all these customs happen, he says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, that Allah inspired the soul to know the bad and the good. So in a way, we see in the Quran, just as the Psychology Today magazine has shown, that Allah inspired the humanity, the human being, ilham. it granted us that knowledge from pre-birth of good and bad. Right? So at a very basic rudimentary level, these young children in front of us here on the boys' side or on the sisters' side, they're all born with a pure fitra, a pure nature. They know that lying is bad, that cheating is bad, that stealing is bad, that bullying others is bad. They know all of these things. But you know, there are three problems that come up that get our children to change. They lose the moral compass. One is, unfortunately, the family. The parents sometimes will ask the children to lie on their behalf. They'll say, oh, if so-and-so is calling on the phone, tell them I'm not home. You know, and so the kid says, my dad told me to tell you that he's not at home right now. So we teach our children to lie. That's one issue, right? And that's one example. There's so many other issues that we teach our children to destroy that fitra. The culture sometimes, it destroys our moral compass. You know, in some cultures in the East, they have a thing called ta'aruf. If you're Iranian or Afghani, you may know what ta'aruf is. It's basically lying in a nice way. You don't want to do something, but you want to make it seem that you are being nice to somebody. Scholars have said that ta'aruf is haram. It's a form of lying to somebody because you don't mean it. Right? You say one thing, but you don't really want to give what you are saying to them. So sometimes our culture corrupts us. Eastern cultures, Western cultures, wherever we be, our culture, Canadian culture may also corrupt us. Like I said about the handshaking and this and that. So either our parents corrupt us, our culture corrupts us, or the society that we live in. We leave our culture from the Eastern country, we come to Canada, and we pick up, unfortunately, some of the bad habits of the society. We have to take the good when we come here, and we leave the bad. Even when we're back home, when we learn Islam, we take the good of our culture, because Islam never came to destroy culture. It came to enhance the human being and say that whenever your culture overrules religion or overrides religion, you drop the culture, you follow the religion. And so obviously, we have to navigate all of this, you know, at the same time as praying and fasting and learning our aqaid and memorizing Quran and doing all of these things. And it becomes very daunting many times. We probably find that we don't have enough time in the day. We work 10, 12, 14 hours, and we're all in that same category, myself included. We work so hard, we come home, we're tired. We just want to kick back and watch television. But then we recognize we have religious duties, we have family responsibilities to our spouse, to our children, to our community, the religious community. And obviously to manage all of this becomes very difficult, if not impossible. And that will be a topic for the last 2 nights of living Islam faithfully and ethically and trying to balance our life. So I won't go too far into that. But just to close off and to remind us that Islamic morality was meant to make us better human beings, to make us the best. As it is physically, we're the best that God created us. We can't improve our physical greatness. Yes, you can put makeup on. Women, that is, can put makeup on. And that too, only when their husband is around. You can improve your looks physically like that. You can do certain things. But ultimately, those will go away, right? Today, you're a young man, 18, 19. You're working out at the gym. You have the six-pack. You got the muscles. You got, a full head of hair. But you'll get old eventually. Your hair will begin to get white. It'll fall out. You'll become bald. You'll get the pot belly. But if you have akhlaq, morality, and you've ingrained it in your psyche, that would never leave you. You'll always be a good person. You'll always do the right thing. You'll always treat people, Muslim, non-Muslim, Shia, non-Shia. You'll treat everybody with respect. Even if they don't follow our path, you'll still respect them, because at the end of the day, we live a life of Islam as taught by the Prophet, as lived by Amir al-Mu'mineen, and we have so many examples, I mentioned them in the nights before, that we live like Ali, and that means we live the characteristics of Imam Ali, the akhlaq of Imam Ali, right? If he was the door to the city of knowledge, Rasulullah is the city of knowledge, Imam Ali is the gate. If the Prophet was the walking Quran, then what does that make Imam Ali? It's nothing less than the way to get to the Quran. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Tonight, as we know, is the 5th night of this month of Muharram. A few nights ago, I touched upon where the cause of Karbala began. As you recall, I talked about Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim, brothers who unfortunately did not see eye to eye. And unfortunately, that animosity, that hatred continued into their children, to the point where we are here tonight to remember the tragedy of Karbala. But let me just give you a few details and to fill in the blanks of what was happening after that time, up until maybe a few years before the event of Karbala. We know for a fact that Imam Ali alayhi salam was deprived of his khilafat for 25 years. Yes, he was Imam from day one, the day that Rasulullah breathed his last on the 28th of Safar. From the very instant, from the very second that the Prophet left this world, his soul left his body, Imam Ali was the Imam of the Ummah. He was the Khalifa. We accepted him. Those who loved him at that time accepted him. Unfortunately, the masses, because of political intrigue, because of the animosities that I talked about a few nights ago, they went to Saqifa, Bani Sa'ida, that tent compound. They hatched a plot with about 20 or 30 people. They rejected the majority of the Muslim community, and Imam Ali was taken away. His rights were taken away, not just once, not twice, but 3 times his rights were stolen from him. When you get home, read the first sermon in Najul Balagha, or the third rather, I think Shek Shakia it's called. And you'll see how he describes the pain that he felt, and how he describes the first, the second, and the third plundering his rights, destroying the Ummah of Islam. But you know, it didn't stop there, because yes, that wasn't the beginning of Karbala. As I said, the beginning of Karbala began with Banu Hashim and Banu Umayyah, and the hatred Banu Umayyah had for his blood relative of Hashim. Once Abu Bakr takes on the caliphate, as we know, he led for many years, and he brings a person into the government who for 23 years was the most vehement enemy of Islam, Abu Sufyan and his family. 23 years, this family, and they're from Banu Umayyah, so they had a 100, 200, 300-year hatred for the Banu Hashim. But Abu Bakr puts in people like Muawiyah as a leader, as a military spokesman, or as a military general, who 23 years he fought against Islam, he fought against this religion. And then on the day of the Fath of Makkah, they convert out of political expediency, because it was either that or maybe be put to death. And you put a man like that in charge of the Muslim community, right? He is appointed to take military expeditions. This is where Sham, where the Levant is conquered. They go under the rule of the so-called Muslims. Uthman comes into power. Obviously, him and Muawiyah are cousins. They're first cousins, so there's nepotism. He's putting Banu Umayyah into power because they're his family, his uncles, his cousins, his second cousins. And in all of that mixture, Uthman is killed. Muawiyah wants to avenge the death. We know that Imam Ali then is the Khalifa 4 years and about 10 months. He's fighting war after war after war with Muawiyah, with the Khawarij. He has to fight against Mu'mineen Aisha in the Battle of Jamal. All of these wars take place because of that animosity that Banu Umayyah had for Banu Hashim. Muawiyah dies in the year 60 AH. And as we know, Abu Abdullah is in Mecca, in Medina. He gets the news and he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We all belong to Allah, the good, the bad, the sinner, and the saint, and we're all going back to Allah. And he basically begins to chart out the actual mission of what he's going to do from that day forward. And inshallah, we'll look at that tomorrow night and move on from there. Because there's obviously a lot that Abu Abdullah was doing, because Muawiyah dies in Rajab, right? Yazid takes over immediately. You have Rajab, you have the end of Rajab, you have all Sha'ban. You have Ramadan, you have Shawwal, you have Dhul Qa'dah, and you have Dhul Hijjah. So 4 months and a bit, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is in Mecca. What is he doing for 4 months? He's not doing Umrah and Hajj and Tawaf all day and night. He's doing something. He's trying to politically awaken the masses, you know. And so I want to hopefully in these next nights try and look at those 4 months. What is he doing that got us to tonight? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But tonight we look at a man who was there for Abu Abdullah. He was not the youngest of men. You know, we had Hazrat Ali Akbar, a young man in his 20s. We had young men like Qasim, a teenager. We have young men in Karbala who had the physical strength to lift a sword, who had the physical strength to wear the armor on the body. But we're talking about a man tonight, brothers and sisters, Habib ibn Mazahir, 70-year-old man. Subhanallah. 70 years old. Can you imagine? 70 years old, he's been a devotee of Imam Ali alayhi salam. We don't know whether he was with the Prophet. Chances are he didn't see Rasulullah, but he may have been a tabi'een when he came after the companions. But he was there with Imam Ali in the battles. He stood side by side with the commander. He was there with Imam Hassan. He was there with Abu Abdullah in the way of the Ahlul Bayt. And a man of 70 years old, one night, it's the middle of Muharram or so, in the year 61, and he's in Kufa. There's a curfew in Kufa. The streets are being patrolled by the henchmen of Ibn Ziyad Mal'un. And in the middle of the night, a knock comes on the door of Habib's house. And his wife and son are there, and his servant are in the house, the ghulam. And his wife asks Habib to go and answer the door. And he answers the door, and it's a messenger who's somehow been able to escape, to get from where Abu Abdullah is all the way to Kufa in the darkness of the night to avoid the forces of Ibn Ziyad. And he gets to the house of Habib ibn Madahir, and he says to Habib, he says, I have a letter for you. And he leaves. Habib opens the letter and he reads it, and it's from his master Abu Abdullah, saying that, Ya Habib, I'm here. I'm in the land of Karbala and Taf, and I'm waiting for you. Are you here to help us? Historians say there's a difference of opinion, but some of the historians say that Habib goes back to where his wife is. And his wife asks him, he says, who was that? And Habib says, it was a messenger from my master, Abu Abdullah. And he has a letter, he wants me to go and be with him. And his wife, she says, well, what are you waiting for? You should be on your way already. And he begins to test her. He says that, maybe I won't go. And he was just testing her, but she became upset. She became sad, and she says, Ya Habib, if you won't go, I'll go and defend Abu Abdullah. And when he recognized that his wife was on the same wavelength as him, they were both on the walaya of Ahlul Bayt, he says, no, I'm ready to go, my dear wife. He says to her, he says, my dear wife, he says that I fought with Imam Ali in so many battles, and I never attained shahadat. I fought and I didn't feel, he didn't fight, but I was beside Imam Hassan, and I never attained shahadat. I have been with Abu Abdullah all of these years, and I was never martyred. But this is the time that I have been told by my Mawla, by Amir al-Mu'mineen, that this is the time that my white beard would be dyed red by my blood. That this is the day that I have been waiting for, that my forehead would be cracked and the blood would flow over my beard. He tells his slave, he says to his slave, that get the horse ready and meet me on the outskirts of Kufa. Meet me on the outskirts of Kufa, and I'll be there. As the servant gets the horse ready, he bids farewell to his wife, to his son. He makes the way to outside of the city. It's pitch dark, brothers and sisters, in the streets of Kufa. It's pitch dark in the desert of Kufa. As Habib begins to get closer and closer to where the horse is, he hears his servant talking to the horse. He tells the horse, he says, that if my master Habib doesn't come, if he's captured by the forces of Ibn Ziyad, he says, I will ride you to Abu Abdullah, and I will die defending my master Abu Abdullah. As Habib is walking, he hears his servant saying this, and he meets his servant. He says to him, he says that you are a free man. I have freed you for the pleasure of Allah. You are free to go wherever you want. The slave turns to Habib. He says, oh my master, oh Habib. He says, how can it be that you are running towards Jannah and you want me to go towards the hellfire. He says, no, wallah. He goes, if you are going towards your master, Abu Abdullah, then I'm going to join you to go to my master as well, to my Sayyid. And so they ride together on the horse. As they're approaching where Abu Abdullah is in the darkness of the night, on that night, Abu Abdullah is handing out the alams. He has the flags. He's giving to Hazrat Abbas a flag. He's giving to another companion a flag. He has all of these flags, these alams he's giving out that they're part of the army. And there's one flag remaining. And every companion will go to Abu Abdullah. They would say, Ya Abu Abdullah, give us that alam, give us that flag. And he would say, no, I'm waiting for somebody special. That someone special is coming and I will give him that flag. As he's saying this, one of the people in the camp of Imam Hussein, they tell Abu Abdullah, they say that we see some dust in the distance. Somebody is approaching us. Maybe it's the enemy forces. Maybe they want to start a battle in the middle of the night. I'm sure Abu Abdullah recognizes that this is none other than his Habib ibn Madahir, his beloved. And as he began to get closer, Abu Abdullah sees that this is indeed Habib on the horse. And as Habib comes off of the horse, he falls down to the feet of Abu Abdullah. He says, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. Peace be upon you, O Abu Abdullah. And he begins to lament and cry for peace that this is the situation that the son of Zahra is being put in. And as Abu Abdullah and Habib are having this discussion, this conversation, the ladies in the tent can hear what is happening. We're told in the books of Maqatil that Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, she hears what is happening. She hears this commotion outside of the tent of Abu Abdullah. She tells Hazrat Ali Akbar, she says, Bunayya Ali. She says, who is it that has come to help this gharib? Who is it that has come to help this gharib, Abu Abdullah? And Ali Akbar turns to his aunt Zainab. He says, oh my dear aunt, this is Habib ibn Madahir. He's come all the way. He's reached us to be here for Abu Abdullah. And here's where the beauty happens, brothers and sisters. At Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, Aqila of Bani Hashim, she says to Hazrat Ali Akbar, she says, go to Habib and convey my salams to him. And so the books of Maqtal mention that Hazrat Ali Akbar goes towards the tent or the area where Habib is. And he says, Amma Habib, my dear uncle Habib, indeed my aunt Zainab says salam to you. And Habib, hearing these words, that the lady of light, the daughter of the lady of light, Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, is conveying her salams, he begins to take the turab, the dirt of Karbala. He begins to throw the dirt of Karbala on his head. He begins to strike his cheeks. And he says to the people there, who says, who am I? That the daughter of Zahra alayhi salam is sending her salams to me. And as he says this, and as he's saying this, the Maktal mentions that he asked his master Abu Abdullah, he says, Ya Sayyidi, oh my dear master, do you allow me to go and speak to Bibi Zainab? Do you allow me to go and talk to your sister? And after Imam Hussein gives the permission, Habib ibn Madahir, a 70-year-old man, he goes to the tent. He goes to the door of the tent of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. His tears are flowing down his eyes. His beard is drenched in his tears. Little do they know that in a few hours his beard will be drenched in blood. But as he approaches the tent, he stands at the door of the tent, and he says to the ladies, he says, oh, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaykunna, ya ahla bayt al-nubuwat, wa mawdi' al-risala, wa mukhtalaf al-malaika, wa mahbat al-wahi, wa tanzil. Assalamu alayki ya Zainab. He gives his salams to Bibi Zainab alayhi salam directly. And as he's saying that, he hears a voice come from the tent, where Bibi Zainab says, wa alayka salam ya Habib, oh my dear uncle Habib. Salam be upon you, oh my dear uncle. Then she says, oh my dear uncle, I advise you for this gharib, that be at his support, be at his assistance. And brothers and sisters, it was on that day of Ashura, as the battle began, that Habib ibn Madahir, a 70-year-old man, and so old that he can't even probably lift the sword at this time. But as he had been trained in the school of Imam Ali in battle, he goes into the battlefield. He fights bravely, as the books of Maqatil mention. He kills many of the enemy soldiers. Eventually, the enemy forces surround him. They attack the horse. Habib ibn Madahir falls off of the horse. And as every one of the Shahada would do when they would fall to the ground of Karbala, they would call out to Abu Abdullah, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. Assalamu alayka yabna Rasulillah. And as Abu Abdullah would hear these last calls of salam, Abu Abdullah would leave the tent, he would leave the khaymagat, he would go towards the battlefield. Sometimes he would go alone, other times he would go with the family, and he would bring the bodies back to the camp. And how could they go and see Habib in the state that he was, a family friend who had been with them from the earliest days? Now he lays on the plains of Karbala, his pure white beard, drenched in the blood, his pure white beard, as had been covered with tears, it is now covered in the blood that he has given for the sake of Islam. فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. ماتم الحسين.
Bigger than us, जिसने सूरज न कभी देखा था, रो रही है वो गुनाहगारों में। मगरी दिल से अली तेरी राहत बंदे बरदारों में। मगरी दिल से अली तेरी राहत बंदे बाजारों में। गई दिल से अली तेरी राहत बंदे बाजारों में। गई दिल से अली तेरी राहत बंदे बाजारों में। गई दिल से अली तेरी राहत बाजारों में। कौन जाने है ये कौन रस्म पहने हुए, तेरी दारों की है सजा, के पीछे छुप गए दुनिया डूबी है जिसकी की आए जंजीरों की झनकारों में। तेरे दार बाजारों में। तेरे दार बाजारों में। तेरी दार बाजारों में। गई दिल से अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों कहाँ ज़ैनब और कहाँ शाम में लोगों का हजूम जय बरहना ऊंची आवाज में खुतबे पढ़ना अपने मुर्शिद का हवाला देकर कादरे मांगना हज़ारों में अली तेरी दाद तेरे दाद बाजारों तेरे दाद बाजारों तेरे दाद कहाँ ज़ैनब और कहाँ शाम में लोगों का हजूम बरहना ऊंची आवाज में खुतबे पढ़ना अपने मुर्शिद का हवाला देकर कादरे मांगना पतवारों अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों और जाने के है ये तो तेरा सन पहने हुए पेड़दारों की है सजाद के पीछे चुप से गलतियां डूबी है जिसकी की आए जंजीरों की झनकारों में अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों जिसने सूरज ना कभी देखा था तो रही है वो गुनाहगारों में गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों आग कैमों में लगी हो जैसे सजाद में हो बास को देती थी सदाएं ज़ैनब खुद लोटा तेरे शहज़ादियों की चोर बर्बाद सिकंदरों में अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों गरीब 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 अली तेरे दाद तेरे बाजारों आग गैमों में लगियो ते सजाद पे हो तोरा पास बदली सदाए मैना लो जा तेरे शहनाजियों की शोर बरबाद दास कमदारों में अली तेरे नाथ तेरे बाजारों में गरीब अली तेरे नाथ बंदे तेरे बाजारों में गरीब अली तेरे नाथ बंदे तेरे बाजारों में जिसने सूरज ना कभी देखा था रो रही है वो गुनहगारों में आ गई अली तेरे नाथ बंदे तेरे बाजारों में आ गई अली तेरे नाथ बंदे तेरे बाजारों में कहाँ ज़हनब और कहाँ शाम में लोगों का हजूम सर पर रहना ऊंची आवाज में कुत्ते पढ़ना उन्हें मुर्शिद का हवाला देकर चादरे मांगे न बदकारों में अली तेरे दात तेरे बागानों अली तेरे दात तेरे बागानों अली तेरे दात तेरे बागानों अली तेरे दात आग कहमों में लगी हो सजाद में हो तोरा पास पते थी सदाए नैना दो मेरे शहनाजियों की चोर बर्बाद कमदारों में अली तेरे दात तेरे बाजारों में अली तेरे दात तेरे बाजारों में अली तेरे दात
بالخاتم الأنبياء محمد مصطفى صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
لاله باغ دل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان شمع دل و محفل من علی جان علی توتی من از بر من پریده چه دیده توتی من از بر من پریده چه دیده زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان بار دگر خنده بزن برویم بگویم بار دگر خنده بزن برویم زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان شمع بار دگر خنده بزن برویم بگویم بار دگر خنده بزن برویم بگویم زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان شمع دلم شوخی من از بر من پریده شدیده شوخی من از بر من پریده شدیده زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان شمع دل و محفل من علی جان بار دگر خنده بزن بگویم بار دگر خنده بزن بگویم زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان شمع دل و محفل من علی جان حلقه ترا تیر ستم بریده بریده حلقه ترا تیر ستم بریده زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان زحمت بی حاصل من علی جان لاله باغ دل من علی جان شمع دل و محفل من علی جان و خاتم انبیاء محمد مصطفی صلی الله
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل فرجهم عن محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا حبيب الله السلام عليك يا سيد خير خلق الله السلام عليك يا رحمة لله العالمين السلام عليك يا أبي القاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وآله السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره السلام عليك يا أبي الفضل العباس السلام عليك يا زينب كبرى السلام عليك يا علي الأصغر السلام عليك يا رقية بنت الحسين السلام عليك يا علي الأكبر السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارتكم
وفي الآخرة شفاعتكم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى يرضى. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء. السلام عليك يا شمس الشهود. السلام عليك أيها المسكون بأرض الدور. السلام عليك يا سلطان بن علي بن المرتضى. السلام عليك وعلى آبائك السبعة وعلى أولادك أربعة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك وعلى أختك فاطمة معصومة سلام الله عليها. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. يا خليفة الرحمن يا شريك القرآن. يا إمام الإنس والجن يا مظهر الإيمان. يا قامع الكفر والطغيان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. اللهم اجعلني من أعوانه وأنصاره ومستشهدين بين يديك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائلا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم الأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات. إنك على كل شيء قدير. على أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. على الأرواح الشهداء والصديقين وعلماء ومراجع الماضي. وعلى روح مرحوم مقبول قادر الله قادر همايل سيدي وجميع مرحومين براء سلامة إمام الزمان وتعجل ذا الفرج ولي عسر أرواحنا له الفداء. وبراء سلامة وفيروز وقام مجاهد الإسلام ونابودي الكفار ومشركين ومنافقين وداعشين والسلفيين والوهابيين والطالبان ظالم وجابر وبراية جد الفرج ولي عسر المعنى له الفداء وشفايف جميع مرضى المؤمنين والمسلمين خصوصا براي بمران الحاضرين والغائبين والمشاهدين جميعا وبراي قبول طاعات وعبادات ونذرات وحوائج جميع المؤمنين الفاتحة مع السلوات. اللهم صل على بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Use a better right hand. I have a video of 7, 8, 9 months
I have a lot of food actually. They gave me like 3 or 4 yesterday. I don't want to. Thank you so much. No, all we can do, right? Better than nothing.
Oh, the other side. Take care of it, man. When can you take that off? It's infected. It's infected for some reason. Yeah, you see that white stuff?